Ingersoll's Lecture on Ghosts, Part 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Lectures of Colonel R.G. Ingersoll, Lecture Number 2, Ghosts. Ghosts and their followers always took delight in torturing with unusual pain any infraction of their laws, and generally death was the penalty. Sometimes, when a man committed only murder, he was permitted to flee to a place of refuge, murder being only a crime against man. But for saying certain words, or denying certain doctrines, or for worshiping wrong ghosts, or for failing to pray to the right one, or for laughing at a priest, or for saying that wine was not blood, or bread was not flesh, or for failing to regard ram's horns as artillery, or for saying that a raven, as a rule, was a poor landlord, death, produced by all the ways that ingenuity or hatred could devise, was the penalty suffered by these men. I tell you tonight, law is a growth. Law is a science. Right and wrong exist in the nature of things. Things are not right because they are commanded. They are not wrong because they are prohibited. They are prohibited because we believe them wrong. They are commended because we believe them right. There are real crimes enough without creating artificial ones. All progress in legislation for 1,000 years has consisted in repealing the laws of the ghosts. The idea of right and wrong is born of man's capacity to enjoy and suffer. If man could not suffer, if he could not inflict injury upon his brother, if he could neither feel nor inflict punishment, the idea of law, the idea of right, the idea of wrong, never could have entered into his brain. If man could not suffer, if he could not inflict suffering, the word conscience never would have passed the lips of man. There is one good, happiness. There is one sin, selfishness. All laws should be for the preservation of the one and the destruction of the other. Under the regime of the ghosts, the laws were not understood to exist in the nature of things. They were supposed to be irresponsible commands, and these commands were not supposed to rest upon reason. They were simply the product of arbitrary will. These penalties for the violations of those laws were as cruel as the penalties were absurd. There were over 200 offenses for which man was punished with death. Think of it! And these laws are said to have come from a most merciful God. And yet we have become civilized to that degree in this country that in the state of New York there is only one crime punishable with death. Think of it. Did I not tell you that we were now civilizing our gods? The tendency of those horrible laws, the tendency of those frightful penalties, was to blot the idea of justice from the human soul. Now I want to show you how perfectly every department of human knowledge, or rather of ignorance, was saturated with superstition. I will for a moment refer to the science of language. It was thought by our fathers that Hebrew was the original language, that it was taught to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden by the Almighty Himself. Every fact inconsistent with that idea was thrown away. According to the ghosts, the trouble at the Tower of Babel accounted for the fact that all the people did not speak the Hebrew language. The Babel question settled all questions in the science of language. After a time, so many facts were found to be so inconsistent with the Hebrew idea that it began to fall into disrepute, and other languages began to be used. Andrew Kent published a work on the science of language, in which he stated that God spoke to Adam, and Adam answered in Hebrew, and that the serpent probably spoke to Eve in French. In 1580, another celebrated work was published at Antwerp, in which the whole matter was put at rest, showing beyond a doubt that the language spoken in Paradise was neither more nor less than plain Holland Dutch. Another celebrated writer, a contemporary of Sir Isaac Newton, discouraged the idea that all languages could be traced to one. He maintained that language was of natural growth, that we speak as naturally as we grow, we talk as naturally as sings a bird, or as blooms and blossoms a flower. Experience teaches us that this be so. Words are continually dying and continually being born. Words are the garments of thought. Through the lapse of time some were as rude as the skins of wild beasts, and others pleasing and cultured like silk and gold. Words have been born of hatred and revenge, of love and self-sacrifice and fear, of agony and joy. The stars have fashioned them, and in them mingled the darkness and the dawn. Every word that we get from the past is, so to speak, a mummy robed in the linen of the grave. They are the crystallizations of human history, of all that man enjoyed, of all that man has suffered, his victories and defeats, all that he has lost and won. Words are the shadows of all that has been. They are the mirrors of all that is. The ghosts also enlightened our fathers in astronomy and geology. According to them, the world was made out of nothing, and a little more nothing having been taken than was used in the construction of the world, the stars were made out of the scraps that were left over. Cosmos, in the 6th century, taught that the stars were impelled by angels who carried them upon their shoulders, rolled them in front of them, or drew them after. He also taught that each angel who pushed a star took great pains to observe what the other angels were doing, so that the relative distances between the stars might always remain the same. He stated that this world was a vast body of water, with a strip of land on the outside; that Adam and Eve lived on the outer strip; that their descendants were drowned on the outer strip, all except Noah and his family. He accounted for night and day by saying that on the outer strip of land was a mountain, around which the sun revolved, producing darkness when it was hidden from sight, and daylight when it emerged. He also declared the earth to be flat. This he proved by many passages from the Bible. Among other reasons for believing the earth to be flat, he referred to a passage in the New Testament which says that Christ shall come again in glory and power, and every eye shall see him, and said, now if the world is round, how are the people on the other side going to see Christ when he comes? That settled the question, and the church not only endorsed this book, but declared that whoever believed either less or more was a heretic, and would be dealt with as such. In those blessed days ignorance was a king, and science was an outcast. The church knew that the moment the earth ceased to be the center of the universe, and became a mere speck in the starry sphere of existence, every religion would become a thing of the past. In the name and by the authority of the ghosts, men enslaved their fellow men. They trampled upon the rights of women and children. In the name and by the authority of ghosts, they bought and sold each other. They filled heaven with tyrants and the earth with slaves. They filled the present with intolerance and the future with horror. In the name and by the authority of the ghosts, they declared superstition to be the real religion. In the name and by the authority of the ghosts, they imprisoned the human mind. They polluted the conscience. They subverted justice, and they sainted hypocrisy. I have endeavored in some degree to show you what has been and always will be when men are governed by superstition. When they destroy the sublime standard of reason, when they take the words of others and do not investigate them themselves, even the great men of those days appear nearly as weak as the most ignorant. One of the greatest men of the world, an astronomer second to none, discoverer of the three great laws that explain the solar system, was an astrologer, and believed that he could predict the career of a man by finding what star was in the ascendant at his birth. He believed in what is called the music of the spheres, and he ascribed the qualities of the music alto, bass, tenor and treble to certain of the